Hey everyone, welcome back to the Beneath the Layers podcast. This is episode number 5. And this week I have a good friend of mine, Garrett, who I've known for almost a year now. I think in August it'll be exactly a year because I met him through work, and that's when I started.
Has it really been a year?
It's almost a year. In August it'll be a year.
Oh, wow.
Time moves by really fast. But Garrett, I think personally, he doesn't say he's an interesting guy, but I think he's a pretty interesting person. Definitely one of the smartest people I've ever met. And so we're here to sort of dive into a little bit about him and some of the things that he's gone through and experienced. And so hopefully those of you listening can get something from him as well. But Garrett, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Garrett Wong. So I work with Larry. I've been working with some of the previous members, a guest on this podcast for quite a few times.
Yeah.
For quite a few years now. But I've kind of come down. I've kind of just come down to San Diego, and now I'm just kind of enjoying life down here.
Now you came down here a few years ago because you came to college here, right?
Yeah. So I left my hometown of Stockton back in 2012.
Yeah.
And then started.
2012.
Yeah. So I've been here basically my entire adult life now.
So you were 18 when you came over here?
Yeah.
Pretty much. So how was like that transition coming down from like Northern California to Southern California? Did you find it to be a little bit difficult? Did you even know people here initially? Or?
So I think I was in a pretty fortunate position where, so my high school, I think there were about 8 of us, I think, that got accepted into UCSD.
Oh, UCSD, okay.
Yeah. So from my high school.
Yeah.
And there's actually, I think, 10, but then 2 of them went somewhere else.
Got it, okay.
But one of them's my roommate still. So,
oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've known my roommate Kevin since first grade.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it's been a really long time.
Yeah, so that's really cool then. So you came down kind of with him then. And
And then also,
go ahead.
Also, my roommate for my first and second year was a close high school friend.
I see.
He's now currently attending UCSF for med school.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So your friend Kevin, right? Yeah. He's the one that you kind of grew up with, in a sense, since you've known him since first grade.
Yeah.
And you guys both came to UCSD. Did you study the same thing, or did you kind of like have different tracks?
So I think, back in like 2012, I still didn't really know what I wanted to do with like, you know, my life as a whole. And I think being Asian and also expectations from my parents is like, oh, you should go to med school. That was something that I thought I wanted to do at the time. But
got it.
So Kevin still wants to do that. So he actually just applied. He finished his MCAT. So
he did.
So
nice.
he's. I think he submitted his applications as well. So I think now it's just the waiting game for him. But I think I realized pretty quickly that it wasn't something that I wanted to do. It was like about a year and a half or so into college.
Really?
Just like,
And since you mentioned growing up in an Asian household, it was sort of like an expectation, or was it just like you assumed that's the route they wanted you to go?
There was pressure for a while. It was more. I think it was based more on my indecisiveness.
Got it.
Of like what I wanted to do.
So they kind of just wanted to push you towards a direction.
Yeah. I mean, I think also part of it is that my dad, growing up, he finished pharmacy school at UOP, or University of Pacific, up in Stockton. And then after he finished, he actually applied for med school and got into Georgetown. Oh. But then it was like a money issue for his family. So like my grandparents were not super well off. They it was a very like, I guess American dream kind of style of story where my grandfather, he came over from southern China, and he actually moved to Mexico first.
Oh, really?
He worked in Mexico. So he was actually trilingual at some point. He actually knew Spanish better than English at some point in his life.
Yeah.
That's also why his first name, when he became an American citizen, was Jorge.
Oh, okay.
And then my grandmother's name was Maria. And then they took in their Chinese names as their middle names.
Oh, I see.
But he got enough money to basically send the rest of the family over to the United States, and then like moved up to like Stockton, and kind of stayed there ever since.
So is there like any particular reason why your family decided to stay in Stockton? Is that just somewhere that they were comfortable?
So I think it's partially that they were comfortable there, and then also at the time, Stockton used to have a very vibrant Chinatown.
Oh, I see.
And it recently, I mean, I think as long as I've been alive, it hasn't really been like that. But I think when they moved, like in the I think it was in the mid and early 60s, there is a large Chinatown in downtown Stockton.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. And so just bringing it a little bit back to, I guess, your transition down here to San Diego. Your parents are still up in Stockton, correct? And
yeah.
Did you find that a little bit difficult having them up there as sort of, I guess, like a supporting unit for you, or just having the people that, like your friends that come down with you, that's helped a lot?
So that helped a lot, and also, once again, I'm really lucky. So we have an aunt that lives down in Chula Vista, and she's done a lot for us. So she's like... she's the one that actually cuts my hair. She's the one that because for whatever reason, my mom's side actually comes from a lot of them are hairdressers. A lot of them, a few of them do nails. So it's just like that's kind of growing up. We never had to pay for a haircut because my aunt that lives in Elk Grove, she also cuts hair. So
that's nice. I mean, if you don't have to pay for a haircut, those can be expensive.
Yeah. So. I mean, I know I have a few friends that's like, oh yeah, I paid $50 for a haircut. I'm like,
I mean, that's a lot. I don't think I would pay $50 for a haircut, but yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, he goes to like one of those old timey barbers and like they shave your face and it's like,
getting your hair done though is like it's such a nice feeling. But so I mean, what do you ever see yourself like going back to Stockton, or do you think like San Diego's like where you want to be?
Settling down there?
Like either settling down there or settling down here. Like, have you even thought about that, or is that?
I mean, given our profession, just between you and me, there's not too many biotech opportunities in Stockton.
That's true.
I mean,
there are a few in the Bay Area though, right? But maybe not as many. Or...
I would say the Bay Area, it's like, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
It's just also like housing is super expensive, and like never being able to afford a house up there is
That's
also...
right. I mean, I think Bay Area is probably a little bit more pricey than here, but so coming down to San Diego, is there any sort of like hobbies or anything that you've sort of just like
kind of picked up
like here that you didn't have when you were over there? Or
I would say since I spent most of my adult life.
Yeah, that's why I kind of figured you probably picked them up here.
It's a little bit different. So I mean, because like back in high school, I did cross country and badminton, but like I stuck with badminton for a little bit longer. But after high school, I basically stopped.
Yeah.
That was just a series of injuries. Not something I wanted to keep doing if I knew I was going to be injured at some point down the line. But then. I think
injured doing badminton. Huh?
No, it was cross country.
Cross country, okay.
So,
okay.
I have like, I guess chronic plantar fasciitis at that point. Like whenever I start running, so the only times I decide to go back running is like, oh, my friends are like, oh, we want to do like a turkey trot, or we want to do a Spartan race, like those kind of things, and it's like, okay, I kind of get peer pressured into doing that kind of stuff, but it's more like, I think. So down here, it was like, beer. San Diego is a beer city for sure. But then also climbing, and I really took on to cooking. But that was like also the post-college, like I became a grad student. And then like after I finished my master's defense, I was like, okay, I realized like, oh, I have all this time for hobbies now.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like really when like... I started kind of figuring out what I like to do.
Yeah, and I know that cooking is one of the big ones that you like to do, especially, I don't know, within the past few years or so, or...
Yeah, so I really got into it probably about when I started at Thermo, so that's 2018, I think. So I also really enjoyed cooking. I still did a lot of cooking in college, but I didn't really get serious until...
There wasn't as much time, because cooking is like, you need to spend some time doing that, right? Yeah. And so what's something that you found that you loved about cooking that, kept you sort of like going with it,
So I think part of it, it's like there's like a more artistic element to it.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the reason. So unlike baking, where it's like, you gotta make sure you follow this, like you gotta weigh everything. It feels a lot like work.
Yeah.
So I think that's also one of the reasons why I've stayed away from the whole sourdough thing over COVID. It's like, you gotta passage your flour, your starter, and I was like, that's literally like being a cell biologist. So I was like, I didn't want to bring work home, and also I didn't want to bring my sourdough starter to work, basically, and like contaminate all of our cells, kind of thing.
Yeah. So do you have like a favorite thing you like to cook? Is there like a one thing that you just like every time you cook it, you're just like extremely happy?
I think there's a few things, but I think at the top of that list is chili.
Chili?
So I like making it like completely from like the dried chilies. So you toast them and then you grind them, and so I think that's like one of my favorite things to do. But then it doesn't happen very often because it's like a 4-hour process.
Yeah.
So
see, and that's the thing with cooking. I feel like that's probably why I struggle to like find time to cook, is because it takes so much time. Yeah. And like it's not like some things you can maybe leave on for a few hours.
Yeah.
But a lot of time it requires your attention.
Yeah. So for things like chili, like at least when it's like a 4-hour process, you can throw it in the oven. Yeah. And then like just let it sit in the oven, and then that does the simmering, so you don't have to like keep a fire on and keep it like watching it kind of thing.
Yeah. And then you also mentioned that you really enjoy climbing.
Yeah.
I think I remember you telling me that I don't remember exactly what level you got up to, but it was pretty high. I mean, I like climbing too, but I definitely was never like that good at it at all. But what's something that like about climbing that kind of just helps you relax? Because I feel like sometimes it's a stressful thing to do.
I think the biggest thing is not necessarily that I come from it from like, I would describe myself as like very much a nerdy person. Like I think it's all a game kind of thing in the end. It's
kind of like problem solving.
Yeah,
right?
It's like a puzzle, and it's like it's like one of my friends that started climbing with me at the start, like when I started, it's like, I was like, oh, David, you want to go climbing with me? And he was like, yeah. And then we realized that it's literally like, it's like the sport for gamers or nerds, basically, that in that sense, because it's literally like a puzzle that you're trying to just solve.
It is like a puzzle. The way that I have kind of looked at it too is like, whenever I would see, a problem or a path, that's kind of what you call it, right? You start from the bottom usually. You never ever really start from the top, but you work your way from the bottom, you go to the top, and it's like an interesting metaphor to me personally, because you get to the top and you can look down and you're like, I don't want to go back down. So in a similar way, I kind of see that as like sort of achieving a goal. You kind of start in a certain place and you work your way up. Is there like any goals or aspirations that you have currently that you're sort of working towards?
Please don't jump on me.
Sure, fine.
I think right now it's just mostly a lot of like, I don't know. I think right now I'm in like a good place. I think mentally and like I feel like so I guess the biggest goal now is probably more has to do with like outside the work things. I mean, I think in terms of work, it's like there is a lot of stuff going on, but I think that's also like, it's new opportunities. So there are some goals there. But I think for me, it's like putting on COVID weight. It's like I really want to lose it. That was like my goal for the year. And then also like I think the other goal, these are just more like things I want to be able to do more of. So like I want to be able to travel more, but I think that's also just like, we never got to leave the house for like so long. So and like we would show up to work and we were like, we're all wearing masks and like stuff like that. So this like I mean, like the first time like I went to like a really public event was the ferry last week. So that was that.
And like, how was that feeling, like going out for the first time after being indoors for almost a year and a half now?
It was really strange, honestly. Yeah. It's because I mean, that was the most people I've seen in like a year and a half or so.
Nobody's wearing masks, right?
Yeah, like not very many people wearing masks. Is like, just out of abundance of caution. I mean, like when I wasn't eating, I was wearing a mask still. But like it's still like, you know, there's just also just a lot of people that aren't wearing masks. So it's like, oh, how many of these people are actually vaccinated versus like, you know.
That's true. There's no really way of knowing that, but I think that's actually really important. Like, is to always have like some sort of personal goal, you know, outside of career goals, because I feel like that just builds your character in a way, and you just kind of, you know, become sort of the person that you want to be, because
exactly. Yeah.
So, you kind of mentioned that, you know, coming out of high school that you didn't really know what you wanted to do, and then I guess a year and a half later you figured out what you wanted to do essentially. So what sort of helped you figure that out? Did you just try a bunch of things and was like, I like this? Or
I think part of it is that like I was lucky enough. So my roommate at the time, his partner at the time, actually it's still his partner. So his boyfriend, he helped me get a lab position at the lab I actually ended up doing my master's in.
Oh, okay.
And I think that work, and then like kind of learning how to think like a scientist was like one of the biggest drivers to like me deciding what I wanted to do. Yeah. Because I think up until there, I feel like science is like maybe not science as a whole, but biology specifically is very. It's really clean cut, and like it's like you accept all these things as facts, but then as you get higher up, there's like more and more like it's less clear on like what the actual answer is, and then like the way that you kind of tackle those scientific questions is like something that I was really interested in.
Again, it's more like problem solving, like so, there's a problem and like you like figuring out the solution to it. So I mean, it sort of makes sense, sort of kind of starts to build like who you end up becoming as a person, I think. I know for me, like for the longest time, I wanted to, similar to you actually, like take that medical route. Though in high school, I took one physics class and like the professor was super cool. I mean, the teacher was super cool. And I was like, you know what? I think I want to be a computer engineer. And so my first year of college I actually spent as a computer engineer, and I was like, this isn't what I want to do. So I just kind of like, you know, I tried that and I was like, okay, now I know I don't want to do that, but I do remember I wanted to do like, you know, science and biology sort of stuff, and so that's sort of the route that I took. So what do you think has been the most difficult part about being, I guess, a scientist in general? Especially in like the biology field.
I was gonna say in general, I feel like anyone that's like been in academia or even like in industry, it's, at least for me, it's like the imposter syndrome. It feels really real. It's something I definitely struggle with. That's just, you never feel like you're at the level until like you really like until you're actually way beyond that is what it feels like. It's
then you
like,
feel like I should be this, like
but then like you realize that you're actually, you know, performing much better than you think you are, but like it's really hard to kind of shrug off those worries, but that's just something that.
Now, do you find it hard to accept compliments, like when people give you compliments? For sure. I feel like that's all part of that whole thing. It's like, you know, if you find it really difficult to accept somebody complimenting you or to believe somebody when they're complimenting you, it's like it's all part of that imposter syndrome thing. So like what's something that like keeps you internally motivated to like keep going and keep doing what you do, whether it's, you know, career wise or whether it's just, you know, some of those outside hobbies that you enjoy doing? Like what's something that just keeps you internally motivated?
I think for me it's that, well, at least on the hobby side, it's I think I have like enough hobbies where that like if something is weighing down on me, I can always just like pivot do some other things in that other hobby.
So you kind of just switch between.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like if it's been like the one that's the hardest to do in that sense though, it's obviously cooking because like you still have to eat, and I don't really like spending all this money on like getting takeout. But for the other things that I like to do, it's if I feel like it's getting overwhelming, it's like you can just take a break kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think for work, it's also being able to, well, especially with what we do, it's probably being able to like navigate in a way that provides like not the least stress, but like plan out your days in ways that there are breaks, and then like make sure you do have time to like just you shouldn't be doing things from 9 to 5 in that sense like continuously, because then that's like you're basically overworking yourself. So I think part of it is you got to make sure you have not necessarily downtime, but like we always talk about like how some of the directors, they always have meetings, and then they have to purposely put like bathroom breaks on their calendar. So like so like for us, like we take like a longer lunch or stuff like
just
that.
sort of depending on the day, because each day can be different sometimes.
Especially there's like varying levels of like stress management just based on like how difficult or how much work we have for the day. So I think that's just something that on the day by day, but I think in the long term, I think that's a little more complicated of a question. I think for me, it's like, once again, bringing it back to kind of like climbing. Like, there are like a bunch of small goals that you can, you do to show progress basically. So like, I think that's like one of the things I really enjoy about it is like you can kind of see yourself improve because they grade everything by like individual numbers, and it's pretty granular in that sense. But I think for me, it's like I set like those smaller goals for myself for work, and then like these smaller goals will help get you to these bigger things. Like, it's like, oh, I'll take on a slightly more difficult project, you know, and then you kind of go through those, and basically you kind of learn and develop yourself as a as an employee and as a person. So I think those small steps, like, don't think about it as like, oh, how do I get from A to B? It's like, how do I take the next step forward?
Kind of like when you're climbing, it's just one hold at a time, just get to the next one, right?
It's like because like if it's also like, how does this position me for the next step, like kind of thing, and then always kind of being able to adapt and kind of think about like how it affects like you as like a like in your journey, as well as
because
work as well.
Each individual person, I feel like, has different levels of stress, so some may be able to manage more than others, some may not, and so you got to really figure out how much you can handle, and take account accordingly as you can, but that's really important, I think, too. So I would agree with you on that. So if somebody was like listening to this podcast and they're having a little bit a tough time of just sort of not only just figuring out what they want to do, like in terms of career wise, but just figuring out themselves, since it seems like you have a really good grasp on that, on yourself, what's something that you can advise them to sort of like either try out or something along those lines?
So it's like you don't know what you want to do with your life at that point. It's like, or like
you don't know what you want to do. You're kind of still figuring yourself out in a way, like I feel like that's something that a lot of people struggle with. You've been through it, I've been through it, and it's a little bit different for everyone too. So it's good to kind of know what somebody in your position might have done or would have done differently in your case.
So I think part of it's like you should really, like, even if it's not something that like, I think you should definitely, especially in college, right? So you have all this freedom to do whatever you want. And like take whatever classes you want. I think that's where you kind of explore yourself as like a learner, as like a as an adult, basically, of what you truly like to do. So I think that's like something that I feel like I really took advantage of.
Yeah.
But then also, if it's a stress thing, I think it's also good to just kind of take a step back, kind of lose yourself in like, you know, what you enjoy doing maybe outside of like learning, and then come back to the table and then like kind of refocus up and then.
Yeah. So kind of like take some time to reflect back and think about, what's something that you really enjoyed doing compared to something you didn't enjoy doing, and it kind of maybe helps you figure out who you are yourself. Yeah, that makes sense. I would agree with that. Now, I think, college is definitely very important, especially when it depends on what you're going or like what you want to do as a career.
Oh, yeah.
But there are some things that, people don't need to go to college for and can be very successful. Was there ever any time in your life where you just like were like, no, like I shouldn't have came to college, or no, I don't want to continue school, or maybe when you're taking that one difficult class?
It's probably like while I was writing my master's thesis. It was more like, oh my gosh, why did I do this to myself?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously that was more of a, it's like, oh, you have this much time before you need to graduate, so kind of wrap it up kind of thing.
Yeah.
For me, there is also the added stress of my lab, actually, the PI I was doing the master's with. Yeah. He ended up taking a position at Duke. So it was basically, you got to finish up real quick.
Because I'm going to be out of here, yeah.
Yeah, so that was a little bit of added stress, but it ended up being not too bad. But I think in the midst of it, it was definitely something I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if maybe I'm not cut out for this kind of thing.
It's kind of the imposter syndrome too, playing the role. Yeah. So one thing I'm getting from you is that you have a pretty big or well-rounded network, and so how important do you think networking has been in sort of being or like kind of putting you where you're at today?
So I think it's really important. I definitely need to improve at it though. At the same time, that's one of those things. Like, oh, during career, I was like, oh, he's like, it's like you need to develop your network more. I'm like, oh yeah, I know. I think for me, I interact really well with the people I do spend more time with. Yeah. It's just that taking that one additional step outside of that comfort zone is what. It makes it a little bit more difficult.
Do you think would you consider yourself to be a more introverted person? Is that why you would say that?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think that I'm an introverted person as well. But, like kind of similar to you, like once you already sort of have people you're familiar with, you're like very much so like extroverted and like talk to them and stuff like that.
I think it's also like you've already gone past like that awkwardness, so you don't feel awkward, having to initiate the conversation. And it's like, what do I talk about? It's like,
because you never know what to say or talk about because you don't know how the other person is going to react. You're just kind of like, well, I don't know, I don't really know what to say.
Yeah, so those initial hurdles are always like the thing that makes it a little bit harder for me.
So what are some things that you do to kind of like help push yourself to get past that point and be like, okay, I'm gonna talk with this person even though I don't really know them that well, or maybe they're someone who's in a higher position than you, so that's even a little more intimidating. But like, what helps you kind of push yourself to be like, okay, like I got this?
I mean, I think within work, it's just like most scientists love to talk shop. That's like their favorite thing to do. So if you can talk shop with them, then that's like one of the things that like you're both scientists, so you can at least find some common ground there. But then also just like, you just talk about their life. Everyone likes talking about their kids. Everyone likes talking about their hobbies. Yeah. And I think one of the things that it's not like, it's kind of like a coincidence, but like I've kind of like dabbled in like a lot of different things. So I have like some basal understanding of like just a bunch of like wide array of subjects. So it's usually easy once they have like once there's like something that's like it's like, oh yeah, like something I can resonate with. Yeah, and then that's a little bit easier.
Yeah, I have noticed that like you almost have something to add to any sort of conversation almost. And what's pretty cool is that even if there's something that you don't know, you always like invested and curious to find more about it, I guess, because it probably adds to your,
I think
things more to the things that you know and stuff.
Definitely part of the curiosity of a scientist as well, though. So I think that's just kind of what it is. It's that I have that like desire to just kind of like, at least know a little bit about everything. So then like when someone brings something up, it's like, I kind of
familiar.
Tracks,
And do you like see yourself like being a scientist? Like, is that your ultimate goal, is sort of career wise, or is there something that you're really looking forward to pursuing more? Or I think we're good. You just gotta,
We keep talking.
Okay. Because that one should be going.
Okay, sounds good. So something I'm looking forward to, correct?
Yeah. Like, because it seems like you really enjoy being a scientist, but is there something like that you want to achieve maybe later on in the future or something like that? Or are you just happy where you're at?
So I think for me right now, science and like, the idea of like problem solving is still something that I really enjoy. Yeah. And so I definitely see myself at least doing the kind of work that I do. Yeah. Maybe more of the problem solving, less of the execution part in the future, but I still enjoy the like what we do as like scientists basically. Yeah.
And so what I'm really curious in is like, I'm assuming it really depends on the situation and whatnot, but sort of what general approach do you take when you're doing sort of these problem solving, whether it's, rock climbing, whether it's science based? Is there like a general approach that you take to these problems that help you sort of?
Yeah, so I can probably answer both of those at the same time because I think I kind of go about this very similar ways. It's kind of the first thing you think about is, have I seen something similar or something adjacent to this? Yeah. And then can I apply this? And then if not, then it's like, okay, then you'd fall back on what you think is considered standard, and it's something that. And then if that doesn't work, then that's when you dive into the literature, stuff like that. Make sure that like there's nothing you're missing in the design or the. But I think for rock climbing, it's a little bit different. But it's kind of like you have a wide set of moves. Maybe sometimes you're just not strong enough, though. That could just be the answer. You're just not strong enough.
You're just not strong enough.
Your fingers aren't strong enough. You don't have big enough calluses.
Yeah.
But in science, there's usually a way forward. But that's usually like where we say like, the biology here is a lot more complex than we initially thought. Yeah. You probably will have to either propose something different or just kind of like this, we're going to call it quits here kind of thing.
Yeah. So what do you think, speaking of the rock climbing and the building the calluses and not being strong enough, that's kind of like, it can be, I kind of see it as being related to science in a way, because you can build your calluses and you can build your strength just like you can build your background knowledge of the science and everything, right? But what do you think is like the most difficult, problem that you have come across, whether it's, science related or whatnot? It could be anything, just like the most difficult problem you came across, and whether you solved it or you didn't, but it's just like the one thing that you just kind of like, I bet you if you solved it, you'd probably be super proud and be like, I got it. Yeah.
I'm going to avoid the work stuff just because I don't know how much we'll have to cut out if we do that. So, let's see here. I would say that, like, there's usually... I would probably classify myself as a more technical climber than what's considered a burly climber, where you just use pure strength kind of thing. So, for me, it's like the ones that I really like are the ones that require flexibility and body tension. So that's like a lot of pushing, a lot of like making sure your center of gravity stays like low enough where you don't swing off the wall or barn door, which means like you have maybe 2 points of contact. But then your hand and your foot, your other foot, like swing out. And that's called barn dooring because you swing out like a door. Yeah. So I think probably it was probably the first time I climbed a V6. So
Okay.
I think I topped off around V6, V7.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I probably consider for myself is probably where I'm probably going to plateau.
Yeah.
Unless if I put serious hours, serious training, I would basically have to dedicate a lot more time than I currently do to climbing. And that was also when I was climbing 3 times a week.
Okay, that's a lot, yeah.
And it was still like, I felt like I was pretty much plateaued at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I definitely had a problem type. Because all of my buddies that we climb with, they all definitely have problem types that like when they see a bouldering problem, they're like, this is my jam.
Yeah.
Oh, I hate this one. So we have a friend that hates like, what's called a heel hook. So
I know, yeah.
So that's like wrapping your heel around a hold instead of using your toes to hold yourself in. And he hates those. Like those are his least favorite things.
Yeah.
Like he will perform like he's a good climber, but like when there's a heel hook, he's like, yeah, I'm 2 grades worse now because he just can't do that. So for me, it's like extremely crimpy ones. So those are like the credit cards.
Oh yeah, I know.
Like basically nailed to the wall. It's a credit card that's like really thin. Yeah. So my other friend, he's really good at those kind of problems.
Really?
But for me, it's like body tension.
Yeah.
I was probably the best one at doing dynamic movements, but I don't really care for those ones because that's usually how you lose, like all the skin on your fingertip kind of thing. But they are fun when you stick them. I think those are one of the most rewarding experiences when you stick a really hard dyno.
Yeah.
But also like when you fall off, it's like the highest risk as well.
So what comes with the best reward is always the greatest risk, right?
Yeah. So for like those who are listening, a dyno is basically where you would like jump off the wall. So you would sometimes you have no points of contact, so you would jump from one hold to the other, and that's so you could. And then if you miss, you're kind of like in free fall at that point.
And a lot of times those are on overhangs too, right? I think that's what they're called. No,
they could be. Yeah, they're usually on like where there's
a
a slight. It's slightly tilted towards you. Yeah.
Okay. Now, a lot of what you're just talked about is in the climbing gym. Have you gone out to like, I don't know, Joshua Tree is a really famous place, but
we've gone out to like Mission Valley. There's a few climbing places out down down in like San Diego proper, as well as there's a few. Like I've been to Joshua Tree. That's a lot of fun. The joke is in Joshua Tree though is like if you climb a Joshua Tree V0, it could be a V0 or it could be a V6.
Yeah.
You're never quite sure what it is. Yeah. Because they're very old school. Like all of them were like, they were all graded like, 40, 50 years ago. And then like, oh yeah, and then it's still the same rating because they don't change those ratings kind of thing.
And can you like, I guess, take the techniques, from climbing in the gym and apply them to the outside, or is it like very different? Like, do you have to get used to, I know you said that a V0 can be a V6 and whatnot, like, is it like a different sort of dynamic between climbing in a gym and climbing outside, or you can use this still?
They definitely translate, but then also there's a few things you have to get used to because, rock is a little bit different where you have a rock face that also depends on what kind of rock you climb on. Yeah. So, Joshua Tree is sandstone, whereas like if you're climbing on granite, those are all different. So, all the different types of rocks have some sort of variation. So there are different ways to climb them. So once you get used to that, then that's something that's different. But then also for outdoor climbing, there's a lot more things called like hand jams and finger jams.
That's where like
jams.
You stick your hand.
Yeah, where you stick your hand in the crack, make a fist.
Yeah, that.
So then, like you do that, and that doesn't really ever occur in indoor gyms. They've just started making holds for those.
They have,
but they also don't want blood on their walls for good reason.
I would imagine.
But there are ways around it now for the indoor climbing, but outdoors there's a lot more of that stuff. And also, obviously, you don't have like these colored holds that are like, oh yeah, this is where I'm gonna put my hands and my feet. Yeah. So
you kind of really just see more like chalk marks where people held before.
You kind of have to be like, oh, this is kind of looks like where they're gonna go, but then like you kind of have to figure it out.
Now, because I haven't really been out bouldering a whole lot, and I've been in the climbing gym, a few times over the past couple of years or so, but there's always designated areas, or can you just go to any boulder and just climb it if you think you can, or do you have to like?
Oh, you mean like in a line or like?
No, like because from what I know, a few of my friends, they go climbing and stuff, and like they know where a particular rock is,
you
like
mean
to
outdoors?
Climb, like outdoors. Yeah,
okay,
sorry,
okay,
sorry, outdoors.
Okay.
Yeah. So when you go outdoors, like, can you just climb like any boulder if you think you can climb it?
Yeah, I mean, you could. That's like basically making your own problem, right? So that's technically you could do that. Obviously, there are guidebooks that you could. They will tell you the general location. In Joshua Tree, it's a little bit more difficult because it's like, oh yeah, it's this boulder. You stop some random spot. It's like, oh, you stop at this marker, and then you just start walking. And so you're sitting there walking with your pads and it's like, I think this is it. And then you have to the old school books is like there's not a picture, so you just read the description. And you're like, that sounds right. It's like, okay. And then usually you'll see chalk marks and okay, this is probably it. And then you start trying it. And then if it's way too hard, it's like, oh, this probably isn't. Or if it's way too easy, oh, this probably isn't it. But that's kind of how you figure it out. Yeah. And so when was the last time you went climbing outdoors? I mean, oddly enough, it was the bachelor party I went to.
Oh, was it?
March. Yeah,
really?
So my really close friend. So this friend I've actually known probably the second longest out of all my friends. Mm-hmm. And so for his bachelor party, one of the surprise events was we were going to go climbing in Joshua Tree.
Oh, okay. So that's pretty cool.
We did some top roping up there. We did some. I also learned how to set my own anchor, which is something I didn't know how to do before. Yeah. So that was a lot of fun. And it was really fun climbing outdoors because I haven't done it in a while, especially since it was 2021. Yeah. I didn't do it at all during 2020. Yeah. But I think the time before that was right before the pandemic. I think. Oh, okay. Yeah.
So did you pick up climbing because that's something all your friends were interested in doing, or you just sort of?
It a few of my friends were climbing at the time, but I coincidentally, one of them lived in LA, so I didn't actually start climbing with them. But I think it was for me it was probably May 2018. Oh, okay. So it's shortly after I started. I figured out I had all this extra time now. Yeah. I was like, maybe I should figure out a hobby that keeps me in shape. Yeah.
I mean,
I'm
that's
cooking
a good
all
one.
this food, but I'm not exercising any of it off.
That's definitely one that'll keep you in shape.
Yeah. So, and then there was this whole. I think whenever you pick up a new hobby, there's this whole drive that you get that I really like. That's you really dedicate yourself to it. So for basically a year and a half, not a year and a half, I was basically not drinking. I was working out all the time. Because during grad school, it was definitely the opposite. It was every Friday, it's we do the usual because, grad student problems. But then after finishing, it was, I realized I had all this time. And then I realized what's the fastest way to cut weight and also get stronger? And it was easy, cut out alcohol. Because that was probably about 2,500 calories probably per week. So I was wow. Yeah. If I cut this out, this is gonna be a lot easier. Yeah. And then also my two friends, or actually the three friends I started climbing with at the time, they all got really into it. So
nice. That's cool because it's always a little bit better when you have somebody to go climbing with.
It's also a competition because it's not it's you if you just see someone that's really good, it's how am I supposed to compete against them? But if you're all start around the same level, then it's really cool to see each other progress as well. Yeah. And then also you kind of push each other to go beyond what you thought you were initially. You just and then also I think for climbing it's a very positive sport. No one's out here talking down to you. It's very, very positive. It's very encouraging.
I've actually noticed that. Yeah. I noticed that a lot when I first started climbing. I was literally my first time, and I just thought when I first started that everybody's gonna be looking at me this guy doesn't know what he's doing or whatever. But half the time they're not even paying attention to you, and they're just kind of doing their own thing. And then they see you do something hey man, that's cool. Yeah. So I mean, you're right about that. I never really thought about it being such a positive sort of, I guess, sport, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's something they're actually, I guess, thinking about introducing to the Olympics too. I think that's what I've heard, or if they had done it already.
It will be this year. The first year. There's a lot of controversy about how the format set up because there's only one medal for all 3 disciplines of climbing, so it's like a combined event.
Yeah.
And usually climbers specialize in 2.
Yeah.
If not 1. So like or two or 1.
Yeah, I can see why that'd be a little bit of an issue. Yeah.
Yeah. So like probably the person that most people consider the best climber of our like era, basically, he doesn't do speed climbing because most people either do bouldering or bouldering and speed climbing, or you do bouldering and what's called sport climbing. So that's the one where you bring the rope up, you clip in. So he's like made a lot of progress doing that, but it's also like, he's definitely not that great. So like if he's gonna win, he has to do really well in both bouldering and
to compensate for the
yeah.
I mean, that makes sense, but that's pretty interesting. Hopefully we'll see how that turns out, and that I'll be really interested in watching that this year. So
I mean, the Olympics start this weekend, so I'm super stoked.
Yeah. So one question that I really like to ask on this podcast is, some people find it difficult to answer, some people find it very easy, and so we'll see what you think about it. But would you consider yourself to be happy, like a happy person living a happy life?
Oh,
currently.
Yes. I really enjoy what I do. I think I really am like blessed in that sense where I enjoy what I do. I know not everyone can say that.
Yeah, that's true.
So I enjoy what I do. I have great friends, and then like for me, my hobbies, I have hobbies I really enjoy doing, and I'm pretty immersed in them. So
yeah, I mean, that's great, because like you said, there's not a lot of people who can say that they, I guess, are living a happy life or enjoy really every single aspect of what they're doing. And so is there some sort of like advice that you can give to somebody who may be in that position where it's like they're still unsure even if they are happy, or maybe help them realize what happiness is if they were to feel it?
So I think one of the things for me, I realized, I think this is something I subconsciously realized, but now I finally kind of put it into not like a more complete thought. I think it's, for me, this is clearly not for everyone, because I think a lot of people can be successful doing this, but for me, the hobbies that I enjoy, I never want to make a job. So like the strictly the hobbies, because I enjoy what I do at work, but then also all the hobbies I do, I feel like there's a point where if I made those my job, that's all I'd be thinking about, and then I think there's a lot of negative effects that can happen, because then it's like, oh, how can I leverage this hobby in this way to basically gain this advantage in like what I do. So I think for me, I have a very clear like lines, like I'm never going to like try to make this a job, because it's not something that I would ever want to make a job. I enjoy hobbies because they're hobbies rather than like their work. So
that makes sense, and actually I don't think I've ever really thought of it that way. So that's pretty smart, I think, because like you said, something that is a hobby that becomes a job can become negative, especially it's because now it's become your livelihood in a sense. And if something goes wrong, usually hobbies are like, if you're trying to make it a job, are pretty risky in that sense. So
so I mean, like the one thing that like I saw, like it was like a survey, like I think it was like something like 75% of like kids like nowadays, they want to be some sort of influencer. And I'm just like, so it's like if you become like a video game streamer, it's like then that becomes your job. You have to think about like, will I ever play video games without the camera on?
Exactly.
And then it's like, will you ever truly enjoy what you're doing ever again?
And plus you can be good at one video game, but then it dies out and you can't be good at another one, so nobody watches you, and it's like
and then it's like, oh, because like I know a lot of like people that are studying up, you have to be consistent on that one thing. Like you can't be like a variety streamer, because that's like when you've already established yourself.
Exactly.
But, like, so I think there's a significant amount of stress that comes attached to it, and like people are like, oh no, you're just playing video games all day. There's a significant amount of stress that there is a cost of like, there's a chance you end up hating it. Like there's a chance you might have to step back from it, and it's like
Yeah.
it was something that you really did enjoy at some point.
Yeah.
And now it's like, well.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Like this whole podcasting thing, like I consider it a hobby of mine,
Yeah.
you know, and I don't really like, I don't really care to become like a huge podcasting, you know, person or something like that. Like the only goal that I had for this was just to, you know, talk with people and have them share their experiences, just in the hopes that maybe somebody who's listening can take something from it and apply it to their own lives in that sense.
I think it's also like a kind of like a different type of creative outlet as
well,
right?
Yeah, it is. I've never done anything like this before, so it's definitely, or anything close, so it's definitely something new to me. So I kind of, you know, just started it and just kind of figuring it out on as we go, I guess, you know. But I enjoy it, just kind of like how you would enjoy rock climbing or playing video games.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you, Garrett. I really appreciate you coming on this week's episode.
Thank you for inviting me.
It's very, very interesting, you know, to getting to know a little bit more about you. And almost a year. It's gone by so fast, so fast. Yeah. It's pretty crazy to think about.
I was like, oh my gosh, it really has been a year. I was like,
yeah. But, that's it for this week. We will see you next week. Bye.